Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For a discussion on a topic which has been the talk of the town in almost every corporate house and boardroom across the world, and that is the eastward shift of global trade. Companies who do not recognise the eastward movement of the centre of gravity of the global economy shall do so at their own risk. And that's exactly the reason why this year HSBC's Group CEO moved his office from the UK to Hong Kong. And this confirms HSBC's belief that the eastward shift in the global trade is not just a myth, but is a reality today, and one which will get stronger every day. Thank you.
Let me begin by introducing the members of the panel. On my extreme left, we've got Kiran Temkar, who's the promoter of Whitecraft, which is a large garment exporter. They're one of the biggest exporters to JCPenney in the US. On my left is Briguraj Singh. He's head of trade services at HSBC. He's been a banker for more than 18 years, very focused on the trade services business, so we will get some very valuable inputs on this discussion from him. On my right, Girish Vanwari, who's a tax expert, executive director at KPMG, and on my extreme right is Manav Majumdar. He is assistant secretary general at FICCI, again a trade expert, focusing very closely on and working very closely really with the WTO. Now, the timing of this discussion couldn't have been more appropriate, because we are sitting in an environment today where you've got the government talking about exports out of India expected to touch $200 billion by the end of March next year. You at the same time have a potential sovereign crisis blowing up in the European Union area. You still have doubts over whether the US is going to go through a double-dip recession. There are arguments for and against something like that. And in the face of that, you have an economy like India growing very fast, trying to achieve a $200 billion target for exports, which on the face of it looks achievable. But some of the questions that we will be addressing going forward is whether indeed it's going to be easy to achieve that in the near term. And on a broader basis, we will be discussing, of course, the shift in the center of global economic activity to the east and the role that India can potentially play in that. Manav, let me begin with you. $200 billion by the end of March, achievable?
Yeah. Certainly, because if you see the latest figures, yes, there are some hesitation, some hesitant steps, but exports are bouncing back. So if I try to project, or if you say crystal gaze towards this 10-11, because Eurozone may be under stress, but other regions, say Asia, we have to remember that more than 50% of India's exports are destined to Asia now, Asian Pacific. So I'm quite optimistic, cautiously optimistic, that we would be able to register that much growth, not very high growth in that sense, but we can touch 200 billion.
Right. But Kiran, let me come to you. 23% of our exports roughly go to the European Union. We are also, like I just mentioned, talking about the US recovery still looking a bit wobbly. You are a large exporter out of India. What's your reading of how things could look?
The whole change of thinking, of perception in the United States, per se, of the people itself, okay, has led them towards buying goods, consumers towards buying goods which are a little cheaper than what they were buying. Okay, in the long run, this helps the Asian exporters, because our businesses depend on bigger volumes, and we are enabled right now to ship bigger volumes to the United States compared to what we were even before the recession took place. The more expensive goods were probably never made in Asia. They still continue to be made in Europe. So I don't think it's going to hurt, at least for the next 5 or 6 years. 6, 7, 10 years down the line, okay, with this whole debt situation being what it is, and with the United States being probably $13 trillion in debt, okay, how they are going to pay for that debt is a big question mark. If they can pay for the debt by ingenious means of improving their economy and by earning more, or ultimately they'll have to pay taxes, and the taxpayers will end up paying for that debt. That is where the fear comes in.
Bhriguraj, you're a person who deals with, or rather interacts with scores of exporters coming to you to avail of your trade services. What's the big change you've seen in exporters maybe over the last 4 or 5 years?
In the past, the East predominantly produced goods for Western consumption. Now there is a consumption market available in the East. Having said that, the West market, and like Kiran said, at the lower price points remains very vibrant. So yes, on an overall basis, what we are seeing is a change in the overall pattern, but the West is still a very large market for Indian exporters. In terms of how the Indian trade basket has moved, well, very recently, UAE became the #1 export destination for Indian companies. It used to be United States all along. On the import side, again, we've seen China becoming the #1 supplier. So that emergence of the importance of Eastern or Middle Eastern markets has been witnessed in India's trade corridors as well.
Girish, if I could come to you, one of the interesting things that comes to light, when you actually compare the cost of landing a container in India as opposed to what it costs in China, the cost in China is half that of India's. Now, you obviously can't argue that it is entirely on account of wages. It's also largely on account of the efficient infrastructure that they have. Wouldn't you agree that it is also in large part to do with the more tax-friendly policies that they have?
Besides the infrastructure bottlenecks, which are but obvious for everybody staying out here, the tax systems of India are so complicated there eventually has to be leakages. When I import to sell, when I buy to export, the tax mechanism does not work in a very efficient manner. So the octroi I pay, the taxes I pay, everything does not become creditable when I export it out, which is unlike China where everything is seamless. So once the Goods and Service Tax Act comes in, which makes the tax system seamless, which makes the whole thing flow through, then hopefully things will be different. But as of now, I know of people having leakages in their export mechanisms, which makes us uncompetitive.
We're talking about efficiencies out of India, even when we're talking about intra-regional trade. And one of the big challenges, we talked about the tax angle, is physical infrastructure. The government's been progressing on that, and I think the current government in its past term and the current term has actually achieved quite a bit in terms of building out a physical infrastructure that's conducive to business growth. But how much of, how far have we got and how far do we need to go? Well, what's your sense?
In a country like India, the physical infrastructure need is massive. So, and at the same time, we have got some resource constraints. So, it is not that we are blessed with unlimited resource. We have been progressing. The current government has shown, as you rightly pointed out, some conviction and some steps towards that. We are just hoping that by the time we have the next chance, we will have progressed quite significantly.
But you represent an industry body. Would you say you've been happy with the rate of progress?
No, I'm not saying I'm happy. What I'm saying, the intent, everything is there. Now, how much it will be really, we will be able to achieve the target. That is the issue. So maybe I would like to see after another year or say the 4th year, I'd like to take a better stop. For me, it will be a bit too early. That's right.
Now, Bhrigu, you deal, like we just spoke of a little earlier, you interact with so many clients of yours who are exporters, even importers. What do they tell you when they interact with you? What are the big challenges they face in terms of, going